What have you thought about attachment? Have you also thought that it's just your relationship patterns, your style in relationships? I'm here to tell you that it's also in your body. It's in your nervous system. It's in your immune system. It's in your digestive system. It's in your cells. And how would you even know that your body is holding on to attachment wounds or attachment pain? Welcome to this episode of the Biology of Trauma podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Amy. We are challenging what we have known about attachment in this episode. This will challenge those of us who've been taught that attachment is just about emotions or that attachment trauma is just caused by abuse or neglect. But what I've learned through my experience as a foster parent, as an adoptive parent, running a nonprofit, working with adopted children from around the world, attachment lives in our body, our nervous system, our immune system. And these patterns start forming in utero. They become the foundation for our body, biology, and beliefs. They even matter how we handle stress, how we connect with others, even which health conditions we develop. In this episode, I'm sharing all of this with you. The 3 hidden childhood survival styles, the 6 types of attachment pains, the 3 critical elements that create either a secure or insecure attachment, and why our survival pattern might be protection instead of connection, and what real repair can look like. This is one of those episodes where you will recognize yourself in what I'm talking about. So let's dive in. Attachment was where it all started for me. It was how my life became so unmanageable that it would change the whole course of my life. And I want your life to be changed too, not in an unmanageable way, but for me to be able to share with you what I've learned. It was one hot August summer day in Southern California in 2009, and I was sitting in a rocking chair, holding my 5-year-old adopted son like a baby. His head was cradled in my elbow, and I was looking into his eyes with love. And as he looks back at me, these words, "Mommy, I'm going to kill you tomorrow. Not today, Mommy, tomorrow." And then he calmly details how he's going to do that, starting by poking my eyes out with sticks the next day. For me, this was what I call my rocking chair moment. It was a moment when my heart was so heavy. The pain in my own gut was like a knife twisting itself. But even greater, I could see the pain in his heart that a 5-year-old could say these words. And as I sat in that chair looking at him, honestly, not even sure how to respond to that, I realized how much his survival depended on pushing me away, on keeping me out, on not letting me love him or even see him, that he wanted to poke my eyes out. He was so desperate to survive. And for him, survival meant protecting his heart. Yes, even from me. He had such a hard life. He had been born to a teenage mom who had just emancipated from the foster care system herself. And here I was, a single mom in medical school, just having finished my master's in biochemistry. I was already working on my master's in public health. I should have had it all figured out. I had all the knowledge, I had all the credentials, and I had access to the best therapies, but none of this would be enough for Miguel. And it would take 6 very long, hard years because I was living in fear. Fear for my life. He had tried to kill me, but fear for his future. And I was desperate to find answers for him. And what I learned along the way challenged everything that I knew about attachment, everything that I knew about trauma. And it brought me to a place where I realized that I too had attachment pains that I had not recognized before. Miguel helped me see that in myself. Miguel and I have had our story, but in the process, I finished medical school, went through general surgery residency, and then started different therapy trainings, everything that I could find. That's when I started the nonprofit, started working with other adopted children from around the world, and finally was able to put the pieces together. And that was when I really started to be able to see how much attachment pain and insecurities affects every single one of us. So much so that it changed my career. It got me out of surgery and I went in to specialize in attachment, trauma, and addictions. When we talk about attachment, most of us have been taught to think about it as just a psychological concept. And that was one of the biggest mistakes that I made with Miguel. And so that's why it's important for me that I'm here to show up for you, to share with you what are the attachment pains that we can carry and how do we repair them? Because I don't want you to waste your time and money in having to figure it all out by yourself. Let's talk about attachment. What have you thought about attachment? Have you also thought that it's just your relationship patterns, your style in relationships? I'm here to tell you that it's also in your body. It's in your nervous system. It's in your immune system. It's in your digestive system. It's in your cells. And how would you even know that your body is holding on to attachment wounds or attachment pain? Maybe you find yourself, like Miguel, always on guard. Not to that degree, perhaps, but you're still living in a way to protect yourself rather than in a place of connection. Protection, connection, they're opposites. And when we can notice that we're living in protection mode, protecting our hearts, then we can know my body's holding some attachment pain. Maybe I don't even understand why, but I can still see that this is the pattern that's showing up in my life today. Maybe you give and give to others, but feel empty inside. That's always a result of an attachment pain. Maybe you're stuck in people pleasing or perfectionism. That is also from our attachment. Perhaps you find yourself overwhelmed with life, and even the smallest task sometimes just feels like it's too much. Everything feels hard. That is also muscle memory programmed from our attachment. And so while we can more recognize these as thoughts or habits, they're actually our survival patterns. And they're the survival patterns that we used to survive our childhood. They are the survival patterns we use to survive our childhood. And what's fascinating is that you can have had great parents and still have these survival patterns from your childhood, because attachment is not just about abuse or neglect. It can form even from subtle disconnections. A parent who is physically present but emotionally distant or just busy, even brief separations and hospitalizations or illnesses, surgeries, that can cause attachment trauma. Or we go further back and even the stress that your mother experienced while she was pregnant with you, that can even cause attachment pain. I'm going to share why, because this helps us then understand what to do about it. Because most approaches to attachment issues focus only on changing our thoughts or changing our behaviors in relationships. They might help you recognize your patterns, but they miss the body's role. They miss the body's muscle memory. They miss the biology piece that is part of attachment. They don't address how these aspects still live in the nervous system and perpetuate our behaviors and styles and patterns that come from our attachment. And this is why so many people, maybe you, have hit a wall in specifically addressing attachment. I see this so often is that people, my patients, people who've come through my courses, they understand their patterns on an intellectual level, but they still feel anxious. They still feel disconnected. They still feel unsettled in the body. They still develop these mysterious health issues that doctors don't always have answers or a diagnosis for. And they still struggle in relationships, both with their relationship with themselves and their relationship with other people, despite knowing better. I've seen high functioning professionals who appear to have it all together, but on the inside are exhausted from holding it all together. Parents having the best of intentions who love their children dearly and want to break the cycle, and yet find themselves triggered into the same old family patterns. People with chronic health issues who've tried lots of things, perhaps everything, but without addressing this attachment out of their nervous system, the physical health symptoms are still going to surface. And so what I really want to share with you is that what we've discovered is when we understand all of the pieces that make up one's attachment, we have more tools to change. We have more tools to be able to be strategic in our approach so that it's not just theory and concept, because that will not change anything. We actually have the knowledge and the tools to change our inner experiences, which is where our attachment pains are stored. We can create actual safety in our nervous system that reaches to the attachment core level. 3 critical elements of attachment then. These are important for you to know because these are the elements that we will need to see if we had any gaps in our childhood. There are 3 critical elements of attachment. These elements are what create our degree of security, degree of safety, and thus our degree of regulation coming out of our childhood. These 3 elements are attunement, neurodevelopment, and biology. We're going to go through each one so that you can identify, is that an element that I got that's helped me be resilient, or is that an element that was a gap? Attunement, neurodevelopment, and biology. Let's start talking about attunement. What is attunement? Attunement is co-regulation. Co-regulation means that there are 2 beings. Sometimes it's not a human being because sometimes it's a pet. So we're just going to call it being, something that's alive. And it's co, meaning it's both of them. And this is a pillar of our attachment because it's a pillar of our bonding with our caregivers. Co-regulation happens through eye contact, through touch. It also happens with the responsiveness to our needs, so that when I cried as a baby, I had someone come and respond. That then provided co-regulation because not only did I get my need met, there was touch involved, there was eye contact involved, there was human contact. One of the hardest studies to read is the work of John Bowlby in World War II, studied orphanages, and they noticed that the babies that were not touched, they died. Co-regulation is what we need for survival. How does co-regulation really happen? It happens through a cycle that's called the trust cycle. This is something that happens every day, all throughout the day. And when we do this, or I should say when our caregivers do this, it allows for the trust to develop, and trust actually precedes love. We had a need. And as babies, we had lots of needs. If you have grandchildren or children still in your life, you know how much they need food. They need diaper changes. They need water. They need a sweater taken off. They need socks put on. The needs are never ending. And they need us to do those things when they're a baby because they can't do it for themselves. And so the way that they communicate their needs, or we would have communicated our needs when we were this young, we would have cried. A need, having an unfulfilled need, creates dysregulation. Dysregulation is going to be that internal unrest that makes us activated, that makes us antsy, that makes us uncomfortable. And you can see that in a baby. They'll start to squirm as they get uncomfortable. And they will actually start squirming with that dysregulation long before they cry. By the time they're crying, they're really dysregulated and really needing that need to be met. So this need is communicated through the dysregulation that's created. Dysregulation is also physiological. It's going to make their heart beat faster. It's going to make them sweat. This is not just emotional dysregulation. This is a physical dysregulation. And so imagine that distress. Imagine the distress of having a need unfulfilled, but more than that, feeling inside that your heart rate is going faster. And as a baby, they're not able to stop and slow down their heart rate like we are as adults. So physiologically, they are nearing this, I might die if I don't get this need met. But they don't die in this scenario. Their caregiver comes and their need is met, whatever that need is. But it also comes with cuddles and giggles and eye contact and the oohing and the eyeing that you do with a baby. And with all of that, they settle and they move into regulation. And now this is co-regulation. And it's that moment for a baby when they have authentic connection. You've got me. I can trust you. You're here with me. You see me. You take care of me. I'm going to be okay because you are here with me. And that develops trust. And trust is what starts to form in their relationship and their nervous system so that they have this inborn trust that when I have a need, I'm going to get that need met. I'm going to, yes, experience some discomfort, but I'm going to be okay because they always come. That is attunement. I really want to stress the fact that it's not just meeting a need, it's what comes with meeting that need. It's the touch, it's the rocking, it's the cuddling, it's the containment, it's the feeling that's created, the feeling that I am going to survive because you've got me. It is true that your logical, conscious mind is not going to remember the early months of your life, but your body has a felt sense. Your body has that felt sense of, was that my experience or not? Did I come out of my childhood feeling alone and like I had to survive? So, as we look at what our young self had to survive, it formed a pattern of survival. It had to figure out how to survive. And there's only one of three ways that it had options to survive. And this is called the rope test. And let me share with you the rope test briefly so that you can get an insight into how did your little self decide how to survive? Because if this is how it decided to survive, it should feel familiar and look familiar in your life today. It's called the rope test. We're going to use a little bit of our imagination. And here's what we're going to imagine. We're going to imagine that I and you are holding a rope. We are standing across from each other. I'm holding one side of the rope and you are holding the other. And I am going to hold my side of the rope. Our rope represents our relationship. And I'm going to hold that rope and just wait for you to decide what you want to do. Get a good feel for the rope. Is it thick? Is it thin? Does it feel ropey? Does it feel smooth? And I'm holding my side and I'm going to give you a few seconds to decide what would you naturally want to do. I will tell you that when I did this the first time, I wanted to throw it down. And then I noticed all this mind chatter happening. Oh, but what would the other person think? I don't know. Maybe they want me to throw it down. Maybe they don't want to be in a relationship with me. Maybe they would leave me and never give me a second chance if I did put the rope down. All the mind chatter that allowed me to see, oh, Amy, this feels and looks very familiar. These survival patterns have not gone anywhere. Your body has stored them. And this is the survival pattern. And this is how our attachment shows up in our life today. Because our attachment shows up whenever things get so hard in our life, we feel that our survival is at stake. That's when our attachment patterns are triggered. And so if you wanted to pull me in, this is what you've done in your life. When you go through really hard things, this is what you've done to the people around you. If you wanted to drop it, that's what you do in life. When things get really hard, you isolate, you push people away. If you were confused, didn't know what to do, second guessed everything, maybe you dropped it, then you wanted to pick it back up. That's also what you've done to people around you, which likely has been very confusing for them and has created some misunderstandings in relationships that have been very hurtful to you. Either way, all of these come back to protection. Whether I'm pulling you close in order to protect myself or whether I'm pushing you away to protect myself, we're still in protection mode. This is just from the attunement aspect of attachment. Let's go over the other two, neurodevelopment and our biology, because they will either serve us for resilience or they will be a gap that contributed to these survival patterns. Neurodevelopment. Neurodevelopment refers to our actual movement. We can think of crawling. We can think of walking. And at what age did you walk? Actually, studies show that the earlier you walked, the less emotional resilience you have. It's not actually a form of intelligence like we've been told. Actually, the longer that we stay on the floor, the longer that we use our hands and our knees in coordinated movement, that's what forms our best brain. And so, what age did we start crawling? And how did we start crawling? Did we have enough time on our tummy? Because that's how we learn how to crawl. When we are on our back, we can't learn how to crawl. We learn how to crawl by being on our tummy. And then we figure out a way to pick up our little bottom in the air. And then we start rocking back and forth with our bottom sticking up in the air. And then eventually we fall on our face. And then we realize, oh, I can use my hands and not fall on my face. Wait a second, Mom, Dad, did you see this? I can move my hand and I can move down the floor. This is so cool. That is how we learned how to move. We weren't always walking like you are now. We actually had to learn that we could move. We were born without knowing we could move because we'd always only been helpless. We'd always only been at everyone's mercy. When they picked us up, when they put us down, we didn't know that we could move by ourselves. But that may have been a gap for you. Could you move? Did you have enough tummy time? Or were your parents already listening to some of the messages about the dangers of tummy time and not putting you on your tummy? Or were your parents so busy that they couldn't risk you moving around the house and had to put you in a baby stroller or keep you in the car seat? Or these baby contraptions that prevent you from moving in the way that will develop your brain and your brainstem. Why? Because they had to cook dinner. And if they were cooking dinner, they were watching you. And if they weren't watching you, you could put your finger in an electrical socket. And so they needed to keep you immobilized. That was one of the biggest gaps in the children that I worked with who had been adopted from around the world. There were certain countries that were worse than others, where the babies were in their cradle or in their crib all day long. They slept there, they ate there, they were just given a bottle for feeding. They weren't even held to be fed. They weren't allowed to be on the floor because there are too many kids, there's too many babies. So as a result, these kids were coming out of these countries with significant neurodevelopmental gaps that cause anxiety, ADHD, and a lot of mental and behavioral disorders. The larger the gap, the more it's going to affect us. So how neurodevelopment works is that it starts to develop our brainstem. So our brainstem, go ahead and put your hand here at the back of your neck. Your neck is where your brainstem connects your spine to your brain. And this is where your life happens. If this part is either not developed or injured when you're born, you can't survive life because the medulla, the lower part of that brainstem, is the part where the vagus nerve is. And the vagus nerve is what tells your heart to beat and your lungs to breathe. So if that part is injured, you don't survive life. You don't survive birth. But then the next level up above the medulla is what's called the pons. And the pons is the area of the brainstem that helps us feel our body. And there are many adults who have lived their whole lives and they have never really felt hunger. They have a hard time feeling when they're too hot or they're too cold and they need to take off a sweater or put on a sweater. They don't notice those things until someone else notices it. Like they touch their hands and they're like, wow, your fingers are so cold. And you might be, really, I hadn't noticed, because you might have a gap in this neurodevelopment where your pons didn't get the development, the movement that it needed at that age to make those connections. But if you can't feel your body, there's an existential anxiety that is created because you don't know that you really exist. It's an existential anxiety. The part above the pons in the brainstem is called the midbrain. Now, the midbrain is developed as we do our hands and knees crawling. Pons is developed from tummy time before we're crawling. Midbrain comes online as we begin to creeping, crawling with our hands and our knees. Now, what's fascinating is the midbrain is connected with our sensory system. I have seen so many adults with sensory issues. Sounds are too loud, lights are too bright, textures are too bothersome. Their sensory system is always too much. And I get them on the floor and I get them rewiring, or what we call reorganizing, these neurodevelopmental gaps. And that lessens the midbrain. The midbrain, how we creep and crawl on our hands and knees, is actually helping our sensory system develop. And if it does not develop, if that is a gap for you, your sensory system will always be communicating danger. You'll always have a background sense of danger, even when everything is good. Neurodevelopment then is an important piece for attachment. There's one more piece, biology. Now, there's a lot that goes into biology. Some of you may have had colic when you were young. That was a biology that you were faced against. Some of you were born premature, which means that you had brain inflammation from the moment that you were born. That will be a biology piece that will need repair. But there's a biology of connection that we need to bring in for attachment repair. And that biology connection refers to the brain chemistry and which neurotransmitters are high and which neurotransmitters are low. The neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and GABA are the ones that promote connection, which means that when those are low, you will have a biology that makes it harder to connect with people. You may have had low serotonin, dopamine, and GABA when you were a baby, which comes back to the point that you can have had great parents, but maybe your biology was set for protection and not connection. Either way, now as an adult, if you still have low serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, you will want to repair that in order to have a biology of connection. If we have too much of other neurotransmitters like glutamate, which happens when we have an undermethylation status or brain inflammation, or if we have too much adrenaline, like we get with copper excess, that will create a biology of protection and will block connection. And whether this was something that you had as a child or something that you have now as an adult, it's still the same repair that is needed. If we have low serotonin, it will be harder to connect with people. If we have low dopamine, we are not going to get the joy that we normally would get with connecting with another person. If we're low in GABA, there's the background tension and anxiety that prevents us from connecting because we're still so guarded. We're trying to manage all of this inner tension. And because of biochemical imbalances, birth exposures, or our birth trauma, or other illnesses, hospitalizations, we could have had low neurotransmitters in the ones that were important for connection. And our own biology could have created and contributed to attachment pains and insecurity. And this is why it's not just go to therapy and talk about it. We need to be able to go to the biology level and the neurodevelopment level. But all of these come together to form attachment pains. And attachment pains are something that happens sequentially. There is an attachment pain that happens when we're first born if we're not held enough. And as we develop and as we grow, other attachment pains are part of that development if we have these gaps. If we have gaps in any one of these three, attunement, neurodevelopment, or biology. Let's talk about the first attachment pain. It's an attachment pain called hold me. And that is because when we are first born, we have to be held in order to survive. Did we get held enough? Did we get held enough? If not, these are the thoughts and feelings you might have. I always have my guard up. It's not safe to relax. I feel all alone all the time. And my head is my safe place. This would have gone along with a pons gap in the brainstem, where it's not safe to feel my body. So my head is my safe place. But here's what's fascinating. It's not just our thoughts and feelings. It's actually our health, our physical health. Hold me attachment pain is associated with IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. This is where you can have pain, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, a number of things, but at the end of the day, your gut is not happy. It's sensitive and it's reactive. That is because of this early fear, overwhelm, and terror that we experienced. Even autoimmunity and fibromyalgia seem to have a connection with this specific attachment pain, hold me. There's a pattern in our nervous system that develops specifically in the first few weeks of our life if we were not held enough, and it's called a global high intensity activation. And that is where our nervous system is very reactive. It can go from 0 to 90 in less than a second. We go from calm to super triggered and then shutting down very quickly. And it's important to know if this is a pattern that you have, the global high intensity activation, because there are tools to be able to repair even that. What would the next attachment pain be? If we are young and we need to be held in order to survive life, And if we survive that part of life, then the next thing that happens for us is that we need to be able to communicate my needs, communicate that I have needs, use our voice, cry out for help. And when we cry out for help, were we heard? And so the next attachment pain is called hear me. Hear me. Do you hear me? Now, there's a number of reasons why we may not have been heard. Either they weren't there at all, or they were busy, or they had their own trauma and drama that they were dealing with. They might have been already overwhelmed. And so we learned that we could not add problems to their list. We could not have needs. We would not be okay if we had needs that overwhelmed them. And so abandoning ourselves in order to have them not abandon us, we shut that down. So if you're following along on the worksheet, this is one of the questions on the worksheet. The 6 types of attachment pain require adaptations to survive at any cost. We have to adapt. We can't live life well when we are experiencing these kinds of experiences. We have to adapt in order to survive. And that adaptation is what our body then stores because it becomes our foundation for everything that we do in life. And this is how we know that it becomes our foundation. These are the list of conditions related to stored attachment pain in the body. The body holds on to attachment pain. We can't just say, that was in my past. We're over that now. Good thing we survived. No, your body survived, but it adapted to survive. And those adaptations show up as physical health problems later in life. The hear me attachment pain. This is the types of thoughts and feelings that you might have. I give and I rescue others, and yet I feel empty inside. I want my needs to be met, but I don't want to have to say them. I just want people to know them. I don't want to have to communicate because I have that experience of not being heard. And it's more hurtful. It's more hurtful to say something and to be ignored than to not say anything at all. These people with this attachment pain specifically tend to have a lot of food issues, whether it's because it's a way of trying to fill the emptiness inside. That could be one reason. Or whether it's just a way of numbing and trying to not have needs. But this idea of, I feel all alone and I'm not heard. If I meet their needs, I won't be alone, is the primary driving thought for this attachment pain. And it becomes a very transactional relationship then, where I show up to meet your needs and I expect you to not abandon me. But that, of course, is not clearly communicated. That's not out in the open. And so we tend to get hurt over and over again by giving and not receiving. The third attachment pain comes along when we're going to be moving. We talked about the neurodevelopment, movement. And when we need to move, can you support me? Can you support my movement? Don't shut it down. Support it. Support me exploring. Support me figuring out what I do with these hands and these feet and these legs. Support my movement. Support me. As you can imagine, if we don't get that support, we go through life not feeling supported. And if we don't feel supported in life, we end up holding ourselves back because we don't think that we can follow through on things. And how could we if I don't have support? So how would you recognize this? Some of it is movement. Do you move through life? Do you take on projects? Do you have the confidence that you can accomplish things because you have support? Or instead, do you feel the lack of support? Your default thinking is always, I can't. And if you have to do something, you have to find a way to convince yourself that you can, because your default thinking is, I can't. I don't have the support. I'm overwhelmed. I can't do this. I can't process this. This is too much. I hold myself back because I don't trust myself to follow through. And here's what's crazy is that the repair that we can do is also part of what we started in the 21-day journey. So even just now, I invite you to take a pillow or take a bag or take something that you can put behind you and do back support. This is how we recreate that feeling of I have support. I have someone watching out for me. We did back support in the 21-day journey. We did neck support. Both of those directly touch into our attachment and this lack of support that we may have felt. So one way that you can know if this is an attachment pain for you is, how does your body respond to back support? When you get it just right, does it just melt into it? That might be because you have not had many experiences where you felt like you had support. It may have been a trigger for you to feel support when that was not something that you had ever felt before. The next attachment pain is understand me. I'm different. I'm unique. I'm not you. I have my own life. Can you understand me? And when this is not our experience and it becomes an attachment pain, these are the thoughts and feelings that we can have. If people really knew me, they wouldn't like me. They would leave me. I people please and apologize, and people drain me when they don't understand me. And I can resent how much people take from me. And there's so much internal ambivalence then because we want connection, but we don't feel that we get connection because we don't feel like they understand us. And there are physical health conditions that come with this. Episodes, flare-ups of back pain, neck pain, colitis, stomach ulcers, and high blood pressure. I moved in the wrong way. Oh, I pulled a muscle. No, actually, you were experiencing a trigger of your attachment insecurity at that time in your life. When I finally realized this, it changed everything for me because no longer was I focused on the pain. I was focused on what's the message behind the pain. What's going on in my life that's making me feel so insecure right now? Because when I identified that, I could do something about it. The back pain, the neck pain, those flare-ups, those episodes, they're just the downstream symptom. They're not the problem. And in some way, an attachment insecurity was triggered. And oftentimes it's related to not feeling understood. We are down to the last attachment pain. Let's talk about the last attachment pain. Love me. Love me. Don't love me for who you want me to be. Love me for who I am. And if this is our attachment pain, we feel unloved and unlovable. We feel we have to be perfect in order to have a chance at having someone who will love us. And we push ourselves more than anyone else does as a result. We are our own slave drivers. No one else could push us more than what we push ourselves. And we are very afraid to open up our heart because we know that we are unlovable, which means that it will only be a matter of time until you realize that I'm unlovable. And then you'll leave me. And then you'll stop loving me. And then it will hurt worse than if I had just not opened up my heart in the first place. And this creates difficulty in maintaining relationships because we don't really want to be fully open because we know that we are flawed and unlovable. What does this look like? Constantly doing to earn love. We can tend to have high inner anxiety and yet on the surface be very calm. We can have high glutamate neurotransmitter, which causes anxiety, and that happens at the NMDA receptor, one of those aspects of biology that will need to be repaired for this attachment pain, because for this attachment pain, an undermethylation imbalance is more common. It creates that high inner anxiety. It creates that constant need to be doing something. It creates the perfectionism and the obsession to always be busy. We push ourselves to be competitive. So these are the 6 attachment pains. Which ones have you resonated with? Which ones for you were like, this is me? And it may have been all of them. It may have been some of them. As I have noticed, we have a primary, and that primary can change in different times of our life. This happens a lot in perimenopause and menopause, where maybe we had one attachment pain that was a primary earlier on in our life, but then as our life changes, or maybe we go to retirement and now we're being challenged with, am I worth anything if I don't work, if I'm not productive? Our primary attachment pain can change based on different periods of time in our life, which is great because then we can do the deep repair. and to heal those. Yeah. The 6 attachment pains started with hold me, hear me, support me, see me, understand me, and love me. These are the 6 types of attachment pain. And they happen at different phases of our childhood. Hold me really starts from the moment we are born, because that's when we have to be held to survive. Hear me happens in the rest of the first year of life. Support me, the big part of the second year of life. See me about age 3, understand me is more age 4 and 5, love me is age 6 and 7 as we're becoming more of our own unique person, which is why at different times of our life or different situations in our life, we can have different attachment pains triggered based on what each of them represent and what they mean. Let's talk repair. Repair is what we can do as we look at how to address the body, the mind, and the biology. Those are the 3 elements that will need to be addressed as we bring in repair. And so what I did was I looked at each attachment pain and what is the specific somatic body work that needs to be done to repair that attachment pain. What is the specific arts work based on the beliefs, based on the thoughts, based on the coping mechanisms of that specific attachment pain? And what's the biology? The biology of the pons neurodevelopment, for example, is different than the midbrain that's more involving the sensory system. Can we assess our neurotransmitters and learn how to adjust them so that we can be creating a biology of connection? Everything that I experience today is filtered through my attachment foundation. And that is why this repair is so important, because I know that if I don't change my filter, I will continue to recreate the same pain for the rest of my life. The only way to really change is to be able to change my ability to go through experiences differently, to have a different perspective, to have a different experience, to have a different response. But I won't have a different response if my filter, my pre-existing filter, is the same. I hope this episode helped you understand your own patterns in a new way. If someone you know is struggling, whether it's anxiety they can't shake, always putting others first, or health issues without clear answers, share this episode with them. Knowing these are survival patterns from childhood stored in the body, these are not personal failures, can help a person to solutions and out of shame. If this episode resonated with you, you can also check out other episodes on attachment, which would be episode 69, How Attachment Shapes Our Biology and Behavior, and episode 128, How Attachment Trauma Drives Anxiety, Autoimmunity, and Chronic Illness. I'm here to save you time and money by bringing you practical information that will help you accelerate the healing journey. I'm going to make an ask, which is, would you please leave a review on Amazon for my book, The Biology of Trauma? Right now, take 60 seconds, go to Amazon, find Biology of Trauma book. Hopefully you have purchased it, and then be able to leave a review. It is more helpful than you know, and it is a way that you can help share hope and help others find information that could change their life as well. I'm your host, Dr. Amy. Until next episode, lots of love.